The title for this sermon is Real Good Dirt. It's based on Matthew 13. So if you have your Bibles, you can turn to it there. Matthew is the first book of the New Testament, and it's also in your bulletin. So if you'd like to turn to it there. Have you ever made an investment? Actually, we all have made investments. They might not have been financial, but have you ever made an investment that you wanted a return on? I'm not talking about like 5 or 6% or something like that. I'm talking about maybe like doubling what you put in. Would that be good? Yeah. Yeah. What about triple? Yeah? Yeah. Applause in the back. What about 30 times? Ooh, wow. Okay. Where do I start? What about 60 times? Ooh, 100 times what you put in. Yeah, pyramid scheme, something to stay away from, something like that. No, so an investment. We all make investments. We make investments with our money. We also make investments in time. We invest our time into the people that we want to see grow. We invest our practice and energy so that we can grow. We all make these kinds of investments. Jesus, he tells this parable, as Jesus often was. He was surrounded by people this particular time, and the people were so eager to hear what he had to say that they were crowding him. They were pushing him. They were pressing him up to where they were backing him up against the sea, that he got into a boat and pushed off from shore so that way they wouldn't push him in. And so Jesus is sitting down in this boat, and the people are standing on the shoreline, and they're listening to him tell this story. So have that in your mind as you hear him speak. And in chapter 13 of Matthew, he tells this parable. Behold, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them. But others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now, a little bit later, the disciples come to Jesus and say, hey, the people, they don't understand your parables. Could you explain it to them? Meaning, we don't understand your parable. Could you explain it to us? And so Jesus, he says, I speak in parables so that way in hearing, they don't understand. And in seeing, they can't understand. And he says, but to you, it has been given. And so he begins to explain, and if you've been in the church just a short amount of time and you're not familiar with this parable, he goes on to explain what this parable means. He says that the sower sows seed, which is truth about the kingdom of God, and it's spread out into different soils, which are people, different kinds of people. And so as the sower is sowing seed, he spreads it on, and it goes on to a hard pathway, that the earth is packed down, and the seed just lays on top, and the birds come and snatch that truth away. The evil one comes, and he snatches that away because it's not understood, and it just goes away. And then some of the seed, it falls onto stony ground, and it springs up in the little bit of soil that's there, but then when the sun comes out, when trials and tribulation comes because of this word, because of this truth, it withers away because it had no roots. And then some of the seed, it falls onto good soil, but there's other stuff growing there. There are thorns. And the thorns, the weeds, they come up and they choke that good seed. And so it doesn't even produce any fruit. And then some of the seed falls on good soil, and it produces a harvest, 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold. This is sometimes called the parable of the sower, sometimes called the parable of the sower and the seed. But because the sower and the seed are the same, some people call it the parable of the soils, the different kind of soils. I planted some tomatoes, and I'm very proud of my tomato plants. So I went to the dollar store and I bought some pots. Dollar store, that's another weird hobby of mine. So got the pot, and I have 3 of them out in front of my little apartment, and I bought dirt. I paid for dirt. That's crazy, huh? And then I put the dirt inside, and then I poked little holes in it with chopsticks, like this. And then I put the seeds inside, and I've been watering it week after week after week, chasing away the little caterpillars that I found on it. And now, voila.
What's that?
Tomato. So this will soon yield me great, delicious, I think these are sweet cherry tomatoes. So I'm excited about that. Now I am an experienced sower, right? I'm an expert sower. But the sower in Jesus' parable, I don't know if you could call him an expert because he's a little odd. Because I wouldn't expect a farmer to say, oh, good soil, put some seed there. Oh, hey, stony ground, oh, throw some seed there. Oh, look, weeds and thorns, more seed there. And I'll sprinkle some along the path as I go home. Like, he doesn't care where the seed goes. In fact, he is intentional about putting the seed everywhere. All of the soil gets seed. All kinds of people receive truth. But the difference is how do they receive this truth? What happens when it falls on them? Jesus shows this great liberality in giving what he is come. John 1:9 says, "The true light, which gives light to everyone, had come into the world." So first, let's look at these soils one by one. For those of you who this story is new, we have this, number one, we have this hard, packed earth. This earth has been trampled over for a long time. It's very solid, and when the seed comes on top of it, it's like, get away, because it doesn't want that truth. It doesn't want that seed to get inside. It has a thick defense. And so the birds come and they snatch it up and take it right off the surface. It could be a resistance to the truth, but it also could be that you might be like me, where you are carefully existing. You're content in what is going on in your life, and you don't want that seed to come in, grow roots, and mess everything up. Ruin your whole life, change the whole thing over. Now, that's one kind of soil. Maybe you relate to that, where when something new from God comes into your life, you're like, I don't know about that. And then soon you forget about it. Or maybe you feel that when you receive truth, you're super excited about it. It's what you just wow, that's such an amazing fact. That's such an amazing thing, application to my life. And it's great because there's good dirt on the surface. But underneath that layer of good dirt, there's this rocky core, this stone this hard center. Good dirt on top, but not much depth. And this could be pride. This could be a hardness that comes from self-sufficiency. This could also be this resistance built up by fear even. And it might look like something like when we're singing praise songs. And you hear, you call me upon the waters, and you're like, yeah, But then when Monday comes and whatever happens, you're like, I'm not going out there. That passion is in you for the moment, but then when that sun comes out and beats down on you, it gets a little hot, and your faith, your dedication, your commitment just kind of wilts away. There's no root. Maybe you'll identify with the third soil. This is a soil with thorns. It's good soil. It has depth. It's good soil. But in this good soil, those with ears, let them hear. In this good soil, there are other things growing in it too, besides the seed from God. There's cares of this world that have been planted there. There are this ambition for riches that's taking root. There are these desire for pleasures, this enjoyment of pleasures that are not from the hands of God. And these things, they grow up, and they grow up and they choke that seed that God planted there. And we can be there, it's all right, I got it. We think we can handle it. Maybe we need a priority weeding to happen in our lives. And by the way, we need help weeding the garden in the back. Talk to Andrew if you'd like. And then there's good soil. The soil that receives the seed, that it takes root, that it grows up tall, and it has the space to fill with its branches and produce fruit 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold. Now, we don't start out, no one starts out, mind you, as good soil. What does it take to become good soil? It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of stirring up. It takes a lot of natural fertilizer being dumped on it, right? Right? When life dumps a lot of stuff on you, it's for your benefit. It can be for your good. You hearing me? Yeah? Okay, you got it. And he makes all things work for your good when you're called according to his purpose, right? He makes all things work together for your good, even the stuff of life. And it says in Philippians 2:3, "For it is God who works in you to will and to do his good pleasure." It's God that works in you. And my question for you is, will you let God work in you? For those of you who have been a long time in the church, who grew up listening to all these stories from the Bible, and you know these stories, what does this look like? What do we already know that this can be applied to? We can see these living parables in the two testaments of people's lives, the different kinds of soil. We see this rich young ruler who was strangled by his riches. He comes to Jesus and says, "What must I do to have eternal life?" And then when Jesus puts his finger where it hurts and says, "Yeah, what you have," he goes, "Ugh, I don't want any more of that." We have the Pharisees in the Bible who were choked by their spiritual knowledge. They were they were being choked by their intellectual pride. And when Jesus spoke truth to them, they couldn't deal with it. We have Pharaoh, when Moses came and said, obey God, and he says, who is God that I should obey him? And when evidence after evidence after evidence came to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, he wouldn't have it. It was a coincidence. Just happened to go dark. Just happened that all these things happened. He had excuses for everything because that seed, it was so hard that he wouldn't let any seed of truth come in. And then we have Pilate. When truth himself stood before him, he said, what is truth? And then condemned him to the cross. When reading this parable, I wonder if we identify with one of these soils, can we change? The parable doesn't say so, but the Bible shows so. Because we also have stories of a story of Nicodemus, who comes to Jesus at night and says, good teacher, how do I get life? And so he says, be born again. And Nicodemus says, born again? What, I have to enter into my mother's womb again? That doesn't make any sense. He doesn't stick, it just lays on the surface, and he lets the birds come and eat it away. But then over time, we see him change to where at the cross, he shows his allegiance to Jesus, his commitment to him. Something happened in between there. We also have a story of Zacchaeus, this tax collector, this betrayer of his nation in everybody else's eyes. And Zacchaeus, who was very wealthy, when Jesus came to him, he threw away his riches. Everything that he had amassed, he was willing to get rid of it. All those thorns, all those cares, all that deceitfulness of riches, he got rid of so that way he could follow Christ. He Roundup, he got rid of those weeds. And then we have King Nebuchadnezzar. This king of ancient Babylon was one of the worldwide kings for that time, and so he brings in these captives from Judea, and he notices that these 4 boys, they're different. They're different than all the others. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2. He wakes up with this terrible nightmare, and he asks for something that no human could do. Tell me what I dreamed. And Daniel comes and does for him and interprets his dream, says what he dreamed, and he says no one could do this, and God did this. And he acknowledges God. But then that seed of truth, it gets eaten away because in chapter 3, he says, I'll be God. And so he builds this great statue for his own glory. And he says, worship this statue, worship this statue. He forgot that seed was plucked away. And he had great joy, but it faded away. And then now, you've got, when he finally acknowledges that God is the Most High God, and he sees him, that brings his servants out of fire, he acknowledges that he is God and that everyone should worship him. But then, chapter 4, look at this great kingdom that I have built. Look how great I am. There's nothing better than me. And then God humbles him, becomes like an animal, eating grass. Hair grows long for 7 years. And at the end of 7 years, he gets it. Time and time again, God pursued him, worked for him, brought people into his life until he could finally acknowledge that God is the Most High God. There is none other, and that his kingdom will reign forever and ever and ever. And then the story of Nebuchadnezzar ends with his acknowledgement of God, and he is good soil. And he is good soil. How about your own story? Is it a story of a life transformed? There's this unpopular reality that the only hope for our soil, for any of us, is to become new ground in which we can receive truth, in which we can grow, and then produce fruit. And the sad reality is that in verse 14 and 15 of that chapter, it says that they closed their eyes and their ears, lest they should hear and see and understand in their hearts and turn, and he would heal them. The amazing thing about fruit in this chapter, in this parable, is that the fruit, Jesus builds this story, and he's moving it further and further along, and he says, and then the seed goes in the good ground, and then it grows up and it produces fruit 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold. Is that kind of odd to you? But Jesus, he knows our hearts. He knows that for some of us, it is so hard to produce fruit. And so in really good soil, it's hard to grow 100-fold what you put in. But in harder soil to grow in, 60, that's a better achievement. Oh man, this soil took a lot of work. But it was stubborn, it was resistant, but he got it, and it produced 30-fold. And Jesus himself, as he builds this parable, he puts that this most difficult soil that does produce fruit, even though it's less than anyone else that has produced, it produced fruit. And he puts it up as the most important. That this is a climax of the parable. It produced fruit. It produced fruit. He understands, so don't be fruit jealous. My big question for you is, the scary question for you is, for the Bible, for God, is, can we go back, though? If we become good soil, can we maybe revert back to the way we were before? Can good soil become bad? It can become bad if you just neglect weeding for a while and you don't regularly pull them out. Search your heart and pull those things out. Your heart can also, if it stops being refreshed daily with the water that brings life, it can dry out. And when the sun heats up, and maybe you collect those stones that people throw at you from time to time, those stones that hurt you, and you hold on to them, and your heart becomes this stony, rocky, shallow, dry wasteland. Your heart can also become hard and impenetrable by God's influence from neglect, from disuse, because you're not gardening anymore. And when the seed of truth does come, instead of becoming a garden, you become a bird feeder. What kind of dirt are you? Ask yourself, when God's truth has come into my life, how do I receive it? Blessed are your eyes, for they see. Blessed are your ears, for they hear. Many righteous people of old have longed to hear what you've heard. May God bless you all.